radical, right-wing, fascist grifter Glenn Greenwald quote tweeted fellow right-winger, fascist, hyper-capitalist, closeted, Red-Brown Alliance member Shama Sawant. He quote tweeted Shama Sawant, right-winger that he is. Shama put out a great tweet, as always, saying it's deeply unfortunate that it was the right wing who've shown how to fight for something in Congress. The Squad, also the Progressive Caucus headed by Jayapal, have utterly failed, refused to use their leverage to stand up to the Dem establishment and win any gains for working people. Glenn Greenwald, like I said, fascist that he is, right-winger that he is, quote tweeted her. In 2020, House progressives and the incredibly radical Squad had exactly the same opportunity as House conservatives had. House conservatives defied leadership to get major concessions to empower them and their agenda. House progressives did what they were told and got nothing. He goes on. This was a pretty good thread here. The reason Squad and House progressives never defy Pelosi or anyone else is because they have had a pathetic partisan media, the Young Turks and Sam Cedar, who defend their harmlessness and venerate partisan subservience. He then links to a thread by Brianna Joy Gray, rehashing the merits of forced to vote, which we got into a few days ago. If these Dem loyalists who pretend to be leftists or whatever had even the slightest integrity, they'd apologize. That's what we said a few days ago. Because Gates and company just proved how politics works when you care more about your constituents than head pats from the DNC. Months ago, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene used the leverage she had to make McCarthy acknowledge the power she had among their base and vow to respect it. That's why she was on board from round one of voting. Gates and company got real concessions that make the House way more democratic with vital reforms like this. That's using power. This was something that we didn't mention in our last video, which is a new church committee. Russell, do you want to explain to our audience what the first church committee was? And then we'll go back to this thread. I got to queue up a couple more things here.
All right. So the church committee was the culmination of a series of embarrassing revelations about how there were newspaper articles that came out in 1970, 1971, about how the FBI was spying on American citizens and spying on dissenting groups. But then in 1974, the legendary journalist Seymour Hersh revealed that the CIA was spying on American citizens, which is completely outside of their mandate. They're only supposed to be spying on foreign actors. That led to that plus Watergate led to the creation of the Church Committee, led by Senator Frank Church. And it investigated all of these abuses of power that were going on with the FBI and the CIA, including sending anonymous letters to Martin Luther King, trying to persuade him to kill himself, wiretapping people with absolutely no authorization, spying on women's groups who were up to, talking about trying to overcome male domination in the professions. Just
MK
insane.
Ultra, Operation Mockingbird, those were all revelations, right? Of that inquiry?
MK Ultra, yeah. And I will tell you something I know because I run a tour called Weird New York, and this is my grand finale on it. There's a building here where the CIA had a safe house as part of MK Ultra from 1953 to 1966, where they recruited a guy out of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent. They recruited him to dose people without their knowledge. They'd be lured up. He would pretend to be a painter or an artist. Very often they'd hire prostitutes. And the CIA was there behind two-way glass, and they'd film people after they were dosed, usually with LSD, depending on what they were interested in. This went on for 13 years until the program was so rogue, the director of the FBI didn't know about it. It was only uncovered because the guy running the operation, George White, was a serious alcoholic And the inspector general found the liquor bills and asked what program was costing this in liquor. That was how they uncovered the whole thing. So these were the kinds of things that came out in the church committee. Like, we did experiments on people as part of MK Ultra worthy of the Nazis. We lobotomized people. We kept people in sensory deprivation for months on end. We administered shock treatment to one woman who later won a lawsuit for a year until she had to be toilet trained from scratch, because they wanted to know if you completely zapped someone's identity, if you brain damaged them that bad, if you could completely create a new personality on top, if you would be starting with a tabula rasa. These were things that we did. These are the intelligence services that the liberals are so eager to give more powers to and celebrate and platform. The ones that journalists today want you to celebrate, these criminals like John Brennan.
The norms and the institutions.
The norms and the institutions. The Patriot Act undid the results of the church committee. It was the church committee that created the FISA courts. Now, we still have the FISA courts, but they're really not doing their job at this point. They're much more toothless than they were after the church committee. What we've seen since the passage of the Patriot Act is, predictably, the intelligence services doing what they're going to do if you let them do it. They're going to start spying on Americans. They're going to start going after people for political dissent. That was what triggered the church committee, because they looked at it and they saw how dangerous what the FBI was doing, that they were literally, and the CIA, that they were spying on people for having a difference of political opinion. And it is remarkable to be living in an era where the drive to investigate that is coming not from the Democrats.
Right.
It's coming from the Republicans. With the original church committee, they put Frank Tower, a conservative Republican, as co-chair with Frank Church to protect the intelligence services. That was what he was there for. He bragged about that later, that he had been put on the committee to make sure the intelligence services didn't really get dragged through the mud. We're going to see the opposite today. You're going to see, and actually it's going to be worse, because in the end, most Republicans back then were for the investigation. They just didn't want it to go too far.
Right.
You know, but they weren't saying, no, we don't need to look at this. What you're going to get today is an investigation of the intelligence services driven by the Republican Party that is going to be staunchly resisted by the Democrats, and that is going to be smeared by the same media that at one time exposed these crimes leading to the original church.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And they're going to have all that institutional power undermining it from day one. Oh, this is a MAGA. This is an extreme. You can already see Hakeem Jeffries. QAnon. The extreme MAGA Republicans are undermining, the CIA, the DHS, the FBI, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, it's just amazing. I mean, who would have thought after 9/11 that it's going to be the Republican Party in 20 years that calls for a check on all of these agencies? Who had that? There was no way. No, you could have gotten 1,000,000 to 1 odds on that. Yeah, absolutely. Tusker says, you guys might find the Congress for Cultural Freedom and its links to the CIA and the U.S. left interesting. All right. I will look into that. Thank you, Tusker, for the $5.
Just don't get us arrested.
All right, so let's get back to Glenn Greenwald. Thank you for that breakdown, Russell. We didn't even really prep that. It would have been embarrassing if you said church committee. What's that? I don't know what the church committee is. I took a chance.
You took a chance, and I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, I took a chance that you knew what you were talking about. Otherwise, we'd have to have an improv game going of our own. We'd be like Ryan Grimm and Sam Cedar, just volleying it back and forth, making up some bullshit.
The church committee was started by Martin Luther in 1647.
Exactly. Having a heavily resourced church committee, too, with real will to expose and prevent the U.S. security state from interfering in domestic politics can be a game changer. Avoid the mistakes of the first one that got neutered. Work with Democrats like Ilhan Omar, who are serious. So interesting. Greenwald gives a little shout out here to Ilhan Omar, who liked a tweet saying, I'm not usually a big fan of sequels, but Church Committee 2 is long, long overdue. Those who need to be kept off the church committee and all committees are those who are agents and liars for the U.S. security state, Representative Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. Omar was the first after 1/6 to warn against a new domestic war on terror. As long as the Squad and HPC have a small army of YouTube hosts and various pseudo-left writers to defend everything they do, most will remain captive to the Biden White House, Schumer, and Jeffries. This is the key sentence here. They're gone. Pointless and empty partisans work with anyone serious about these reforms. Work with anyone serious about their reforms. Don't worry about the fact that the Squad is theoretically with you on Medicare for All. Because as they've proven time and time again, the fact that they are with you in theory means dog shit in practice.
Means
if they're
nothing.
not
So was
willing to
Pelosi, right? She had signs in the basement.
She had signs in the basement. Exactly.
All right.
Work with anyone serious about these reforms. You need cross-partisan coalitions right now. I won't even say bipartisan, even though they kind of mean the same thing, but bipartisan implies that you're going to compromise on certain ideas. I'm talking about cross-partisan. Whereas if you're against the continuous funding of the Russia-Ukraine war, and let's say a free market libertarian is against it, that's an example of a cross-partisan coalition because you don't compromise on any ideas. You just find someone who's in another camp who has the same idea that you have, right? People's Party and the Libertarian Party are doing a march on Washington on February 19th. That actually is meant to not only oppose the war, but actually demonstrate that key point that a leftist organization and I don't want to call them a right-wing organization, but certainly economically far to the right. They can, if they have common ground on this very key issue, they can ally. And that's what Greenwald said there. And it's hugely important because we've talked about this in the past. The fact that there is ideological agreement between us and AOC on unwinnable fights like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal and Jordan said a $30 minimum wage, right? What the hell does that mean if those fights are gone? If there's no path to victory there and the people who have the power who might be able to leverage their spot in order to extract some kind of policy concession in the direction of those things. And we're not even talking about getting anywhere close to any of those big ticket items. They won't even do that. Then what the hell difference does it make whether you agree with them on those things or not? You have to pick battles that are winnable, find people you can fight them with, and fight with them. That's the name of the game now.
That's it. Defunding the Pentagon. Who's driving the effort to audit the Pentagon? It's Rand Paul. It's not a Democrat. No Democrats are fighting to audit the Pentagon. You want to start getting out of these endless wars. You want to defund the Pentagon. You want to have a federal definition of censorship tech companies and social media platforms. You want to rein in their arbitrary power. You're going to have to work with libertarian Republicans and civil liberty-minded Republicans.
Please clap.